Get on the ground now, or I'll make you regret it. Those were the first words. Sergeant David Rohr shouted, as his partner's flashlight cut through the dim parking garage and landed on a woman who hadn't done a thing wrong. Before we go any further, I want to know where you're watching from. Tell me your city in the comments. Subscribe if you believe respect should never depend on color, and leave a like so more people hear this story. Now, let's begin. It was 6:42 in the evening on a wet April evening at the Jefferson National Parking Complex, just across from the Pentagon Annex. General Naomi Carter had just finished a classified cyber defense briefing that would later shape the nation's new security doctrine. She wasn't in uniform, only a gray hoodie, black slacks, and a tired look after 14 hours of non-stop work. Her Tesla was parked near the exit. She wanted nothing more than to go home, call her teenage daughter, and sleep. But the moment she reached for the handle, heavy boots echoed behind her, and a blinding beam of light caught her face. "Hands where I can see them," Rohr barked again, gun drawn, finger tight on the trigger. His partner, Officer Ethan Boyd, young and nervous, followed close behind. Naomi turned slowly, palms open, confusion cutting through exhaustion. "Officers," she said evenly, "there must be a mistake. I'm Major General Naomi Carter, United States Air Force. My identification is in my coat pocket." Rohr didn't even let her finish. He stepped forward, voice dripping with contempt. "Yeah, and I'm the president." Turns on the car. Naomi's pulse steadied instead of rising. She'd faced armed militants overseas, cyber threats in command rooms, but never this. A home soil humiliation from the very people sworn to protect, she repeated calmly. "My ID is right here. Please verify it before you escalate." Rohr grabbed her wrist, twisting it sharply behind her back until the metal of his cuffs bit into her skin. Boyd flinched but said nothing. The sound of steel clicking shut echoed off the concrete walls like a verdict. Naomi didn't resist. She knew anger would only feed their assumptions. Her laptop bag slid off her shoulder, thudding against the floor, its military-issue seal gleaming faintly. Rohr sneered. "What's in the bag?" "Ha! Stolen tech." Naomi drew in a quiet breath. "That is a secured Air Force system. You are touching federal property on restricted ground." He smirked. "You people always got an excuse." Those two words, "you people," cut deeper than the cuffs. Naomi had heard prejudice in boardrooms and briefing halls. But here, in the echo of authority, it burned differently. She lowered her gaze, not in defeat, but in calculation. Hidden beneath her sleeve was a small black band, her encrypted smartwatch. With a subtle movement of her thumb, she pressed the side twice. The watch vibrated once, silently transmitting her location, biometrics and distress signal to the Pentagon's Defense Command Center. 8 minutes. That was the average response time, she whispered almost to herself. "You have 8 minutes to find out who I am." Rohr pushed her harder against the hood. "Keep talking and it'll be the last 8 minutes of your freedom." Boyd shifted uneasily. "Maybe we should check her ID, Sarge." Rohr shot him a glare. "You losing your nerve?" Naomi looked over her shoulder. "Officer Boyd, listen to your conscience, cause when this is over, it'll be the only thing left standing with you." Boyd swallowed hard but stayed silent. Rain dripped from the pipes overhead, tapping rhythmically like a clock counting down inside the Pentagon. A red light flashed on a monitor in the communications wing. Lieutenant Colonel Elena Brooks leaned forward. "Echo alert. General Carter, active distress," she said, her voice tightening. Colonel Marcus Hale spun from his desk. "Get me visual now." Within seconds, surveillance feeds lit up. Cameras in the garage zoomed onto the scene. 2 officers, 1 woman restrained, and the unmistakable glint of a Pentagon-issued ID on the ground. "Deploy Protocol Delta," Hale ordered. "Full authorization." Back in the garage, Rohr rummaged through Naomi's bag. He pulled out her laptop, running his fingers across the case marked "Property of U.S. Air Force Cyber Command." "What's this, some fancy toy?" Naomi's voice remained steady. "Serial tagged and encrypted. If you open it, you're breaching national security." He laughed. "You think I care?" Naomi studied him quietly, memorizing his every move. The arrogance, the ignorance, the false confidence of power untested. Her heart didn't race. Her training wouldn't allow it. Instead, she felt something colder. Disappointment. "Sergeant," she said, "you're standing on federal property within range of Pentagon cameras. If you don't stop, that uniform you're wearing will be a costume by morning." Rohr hesitated for the first time. He glanced toward Boyd, whose face had gone pale. From his radio came a sudden voice. "Unit 214, confirm your status. We have inquiries from Defense Command requesting identification verification." Rohr froze. Boyd stammered, "They're calling from the Pentagon." "Sarge," Naomi spoke softly, almost kindly. "I told you 8 minutes." For a moment, no one moved. Then the distant echo of boots thundered through the garage entrance. Measured, coordinated, unmistakably military. Boyd's breath quickened. Rohr's hand slipped from her shoulder. Naomi stood taller, cuffs still on, dignity unshaken. "You're about to meet the people who actually outrank you," she said. And when Captain Luis Moreno's voice boomed, "Federal Military Police, step away from the detainee," the color drained from Rohr's face. Naomi exhaled slowly, her composure never breaking. 8 minutes had passed. The signal had been answered. And before the night was over, those 8 minutes would end 2 careers and change an entire department forever. When the alert flashed red inside the Pentagon's Defense Command Center, the room went from quiet to chaos in seconds. Lieutenant Colonel Elena Brooks was the first to recognize the code. Echo alert. General Naomi Carter. Level 1 distress, she said, her voice sharp but controlled. Around her, officers rose from their desks, the atmosphere thickening with urgency. No one needed to ask who she was. Naomi Carter was one of the Air Force's most respected generals. A cyber defense strategist who'd spent years building the nation's firewall against digital warfare if she'd triggered a distress call. Something serious had gone wrong. Colonel Marcus Hale, Director of Defense Oversight, turned toward the command table. Get her coordinates, he ordered. Within seconds, the map on the wall lit up. A small red dot pulsing inside a parking complex across from the Pentagon annex. Hale narrowed his eyes. What the hell is she doing out there? Elena responded. She left the annex 20 minutes ago, after the cybersecurity briefing. She must have been heading home. Hale grabbed the phone. Patch me through to Military Police Captain Luis Moreno's unit. Tell them to move now. Across the river, Naomi Carter stood cuffed beside her car, her dignity bleeding into silence. Sergeant Rohr paced in front of her, still convinced he had authority over what he didn't understand. Officer Boyd stood nearby, his eyes darting nervously toward the exit, the weight of doubt sinking heavier by the second. Naomi remained calm, the chill of the metal cuffs biting into her wrists. She looked at Rohr not with anger, but with certainty. You still have time to make this right, she said softly. Rohr laughed under his breath. Yeah, and who's gonna tell me that? Your lawyer. Naomi didn't answer. She didn't need to. The signal had already reached people who outranked every badge in that garage inside the Pentagon. The command center was now a flurry of motion. Hale leaned over the table. Get eyes on her, full visual feed. I want confirmation she's secure. Elena's fingers flew across the keyboard, tapping into the parking structure surveillance cameras. The image flickered, then stabilized. A grainy feed showing Naomi standing beside her Tesla, hands cuffed, flanked by 2 local officers. Jesus Christ, Hale muttered. They actually restrained her. Elena swallowed hard. Sir, do we notify the secretary? Hale shook his head. Not yet. Let's get her out first. He turned to a younger lieutenant. You send an encrypted message to Joint Command. Priority clearance. Tell them this is a federal interference incident. At that very moment, Naomi's smartwatch vibrated again, a second signal confirming that her call had been received, her location locked, and that a response was inbound. She closed her eyes briefly, whispering, Good. Boyd noticed the faint green glow on her wrist. What is that? He asked nervously. Rohr barked. Ignore it. But Boyd couldn't. Sarge. She said she's Air Force. What if this is real? Rohr turned, his temper flaring. You think she's some kind of secret agent? She's a liar. You can see what she looks like. Naomi opened her eyes. Calm and steady. That's exactly the problem. Sergeant, you only see what you want. Back inside the command center, Captain Moreno's voice came through the radio. Unit Alpha en route, 3 minutes out, Hale replied. You are authorized for full intervention. Do not engage unless the general is in immediate danger. Cameras confirm she's restrained but stable. Moreno's tone hardened. Copy that. We'll get her. Hale turned to Elena. Pull the file on both officers involved. Within moments, the screen displayed their names and service records. Sergeant David Rohr, 15 years with Arlington PD, 2 prior disciplinary complaints for excessive force. Officer Ethan Boyd, 28, less than 2 years on the job, clean record, recently married. Hale's expression darkened. Perfect. 1 arrogant veteran, 1 scared rookie. This will go downhill fast. Meanwhile, in the garage, Rohr had begun pacing again, his insecurity feeding his pride. What's a woman like you doing here anyway? He asked mockingly. Middle of a federal lot, dressed like that, acting suspicious. You think I'm stupid? Naomi looked at him quietly. I don't think you're stupid, Sergeant. I think you're afraid. He stopped cold. Afraid of what? Of being wrong, she said. Afraid that all the authority in your badge can't hide the fact that you just humiliated a senior U.S. military officer. Rohr's jaw tightened. You don't scare me. Naomi's voice dropped low. You should be scared of the people who are about to walk through that door. And as if on cue, the sound of engines echoed from outside, the deep rumble of armored vehicles. Boyd looked up, startled. Sarge, do you hear that? Before Rohr could respond, a sharp voice broke through their radios. All units stand down immediately. This is Captain Luis Moreno, Federal Military Police. You are in possession of a U.S. officer. Release her now. Rohr's face went pale. He looked at Naomi, then at his partner. This can't be real. Naomi turned slightly. It's very real. Seconds later, boots thundered against the concrete floor. 5 military officers in black tactical gear advanced with precision. Moreno raised his hand, stepped back from the detainee. Rohr froze. Boyd dropped his flashlight. Moreno stepped forward, showing his credentials. Captain Luis Moreno, U.S. Defense Command, you are under direct federal observation. Release those cuffs immediately. Rohr tried to find his voice. Wait, she didn't identify herself. Moreno cut him off. She did 3 times and you ignored it. He nodded to his men. Document everything. Cameras rolling. Within moments, Naomi's cuffs were removed. She rubbed her wrists red and raw, but steady. Moreno lowered his voice respectfully. General, are you injured? Naomi shook her head. Physically, she looked straight at Rohr. But he will be. Moreno gave a small nod. Understood. He turned toward his comms. General, secure. Begin transfer to command vehicle. Naomi exhaled slowly. years of composure holding her upright. She didn't look triumphant, only resolved. Back inside the Pentagon, the live feed showed her walking calmly toward the elevator with Moreno at her side. Alina whispered, "She's safe." Hale leaned back, his expression unreadable. "Safe isn't enough," he said quietly. They crossed a line on federal ground. He stood, straightened his jacket, and added, "We're opening an inquiry first thing tomorrow. I want both those officers on record by sunrise." As Naomi stepped into the armored vehicle, Moreno handed her a secure satellite phone. "Defense Command is on the line." "Ma'am." She took it, her voice composed. "This is General Carter. Situation contained. No injuries. Local law enforcement misconduct confirmed." The reply came instantly. "Understood. General, you'll have full support. The Secretary's office has been notified." Naomi hung up, her mind already moving forward. She knew this wasn't just about her. It was about the system that had allowed two men to treat her like a threat instead of an officer. Outside, the rain began to fall harder, streaking across the windshield as the convoy pulled away from the garage. Inside, Naomi sat quietly, her reflection caught in the glass. A woman who had given her country everything, only to be questioned by its ignorance. She whispered to herself, 8 minutes, that's all it took to show what's broken. And miles away in a room full of glowing screens, Marcus Hale watched her on the monitor, and said to no one in particular, 8 minutes to make history and 8 more to end 2 careers. That night, the Pentagon didn't sleep. Calls went out to the Department of Justice, the Air Force Legal Office, and Arlington's Chief of Police. By midnight, reports were drafted, footage secured, and every second of that garage incident stored in multiple classified drives. The message was clear. When you humiliate a general, you don't just insult a person. You challenge an entire system that's no longer willing to stay silent. And for Sergeant Rohr and Officer Boyd, the longest night of their lives had just begun. The elevator doors opened to the sound of boots, radios, and clipped voices echoing off the Pentagon's underground corridor. The convoy had arrived, and for the first time that night, General Naomi Carter stood without the cuffs that had bruised her wrists. She walked beside Captain Luis Moreno, her posture steady but her silence heavy. He could see the tension in her face, not rage, not fear, but the controlled fire of someone who had spent her entire life earning the right to be respected, only to be treated like a suspect. "Mom," he said quietly. "Colonel Hale is waiting upstairs." Naomi nodded, her tone low. "Good. The sooner we face this, the better." Upstairs inside the Defense Oversight Operations Room, the air was thick with controlled fury. Colonel Marcus Hale stood near the monitors showing replay footage of the incident. Rohr's shouting, Boyd's hesitation, Naomi's calm voice drowned by arrogance. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the servers. When Naomi entered, Hale turned sharply, his expression shifting from relief to disbelief. "You really went through all that?" he asked. Naomi gave a small nod. 8 minutes of being invisible. Colonel Hale's jaw tightened. "Not anymore." Across town, the Arlington Police Department was in chaos. Sergeant Rohr sat in an interrogation room, his pride stripped bare, while Officer Boyd stared at the wall, pale and silent. Internal Affairs had already arrived. Captain Ivan Delgado, a woman known for her no-nonsense discipline. She placed a folder on the table, her voice flat. "Do you two have any idea who you just handcuffed?" Rohr leaned back, defensive. She didn't look like a general. She looked suspicious. "We had a report." Delgado opened the folder. A report from a civilian who saw a black woman near a car in a federal lot. No name, no description, no threat, just her color. Rohr looked away. "We did our job." Delgado stared at him coldly. "No, you abused your badge, humiliated a senior Air Force officer on federal property, and triggered a federal response team in front of half the Pentagon. You didn't just make a mistake, Sergeant. You embarrassed your entire department." Boyd's hands trembled slightly. "I told him to check her ID. I said we should." Rohr slammed his hand on the table. "Shut up, Boyd." Delgado didn't even flinch. "No, keep talking, Officer Boyd, because the difference between a coward and a criminal is honesty." Back at the Pentagon, Naomi sat across from Hale in the operations briefing room. The screen between them showed a timeline of the 8-minute window, each second annotated, each decision captured. "They treated me like a threat," Naomi said quietly. "And I never raised my voice." Hale rubbed his temples. "You don't have to explain. The footage speaks for itself." Naomi's tone softened. "It's not just about me, Marcus. This is bigger. If they can do that to a general, imagine what happens to someone without a rank or a camera." Hale nodded. "You want justice or reform?" "Both," she answered. "But justice first." At that same moment, Captain Moreno and Lieutenant Alina Brooks stood outside the room, reviewing the recovered evidence. Moreno scrolled through the body cam footage, his expression tightening. They mocked her, ignored every identification attempt. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was contempt. Alina crossed her arms, and you can hear it in his tone. "You people. The arrogance is the same every time." She exhaled deeply. "We've seen this before, just never this close to home." Moreno looked up. "This time it's not getting buried." Meanwhile, news had already begun to leak. A defense communications intern, unaware of classification, had sent a short encrypted message to a colleague that read, "Pentagon general assaulted by Arlington cops." Within an hour, journalists were calling, rumors spreading through social media. By the time dawn broke, the footage would be impossible to contain. But right now, the Pentagon's focus was clear: contain the situation, secure Naomi's statement, and prepare for fallout. Hale looked across the table. Naomi, I'm assigning attorney Lisa Harper to handle this. She's sharp by the book and she doesn't flinch when things get political. Naomi raised an eyebrow. Political, Marcus? This isn't politics. This is humanity. Hale nodded slowly. Then humanity's about to get its day in court. In the interrogation room, the tone shifted. Delgado opened her laptop and pressed play. The grainy video played across the wall. The sound of Roar yelling, the glint of Naomi's ID on the floor, the cruel phrase, "You people think you can talk your way out of anything." When it ended, Delgado didn't say a word. She just let the silence work. Boyd's eyes welled up. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Roar said nothing, his face blank, but his breathing heavy. Delgado finally spoke. You said she didn't look like a general. Tell me, Sergeant, what does a general look like to you? He didn't answer. She leaned forward. You know what's coming, right? Federal review, termination, maybe charges. You had 8 minutes to listen and you didn't. Now it's your turn to stay silent. Naomi, meanwhile, was being escorted to the Pentagon's legal command wing. She had declined medical attention, but her wrists still bore red marks as she walked through the corridor. Younger officers glanced her way, whispers following her steps, not pity but awe. They knew her story already. They had seen her in briefings, read her reports, heard her speak about duty, about grace under pressure. Now she was living her own lesson. When she entered the room, Attorney Lisa Harper stood waiting, a thin stack of papers in her hand. General Carter, I'm here to handle the statement and coordinate with DOJ. Naomi sat down, posture straight. Good, but let's skip the speeches. We both know this isn't just about 2 officers. It's about the culture that raised them. Harper nodded. And it's about to be on every screen in America. Colonel Hale entered a moment later. The Pentagon has officially notified Arlington PD. Their chief will be here within the hour. Naomi's voice was calm. Then let him see the footage before he apologizes. Hale sighed. He won't apologize. He'll defend them. That's how it always starts. Naomi's eyes met his. Then we'll finish it differently this time. Across town, Chief Robert Harlan sat in his office, watching the footage for the first time. His face was pale. He knew immediately this couldn't be hidden. The Pentagon had already contacted the governor, and federal prosecutors were circling. Get me Roar on the phone, he barked, but it was too late. The internal investigation had already begun, and a press inquiry had been filed. Back at the Pentagon, Naomi stood by the large window overlooking the Potomac River. The city lights reflected faintly on the glass. The same city she had served for 25 years. The same streets where she was now forced to defend her own dignity. It's strange, she said quietly to Harper.